Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kusak for Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. That's Nick Wright.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for helping us out all week.
So maybe we'll get an NBA game before you leave.
I know.
We get two nights. One. We'll have one night. Thursday nights.
With the little dead time. There's two dead times in the sports calendar, right? Right around the Major League Baseball All-Star break, and then right around the NBA All-Star break. But we are approaching the end of it. But we've got some amazing stuff to talk about today, despite no games going on.
We do. Speaking of it, the Warriors. Let's start with them. They said 44-14, second in the Western Conference.
That's a good start.
Yeah, it is. And it's a year, though, where they've looked disinterested at times. Steve Kerr admits the first half of the season wasn't their best basketball, but said they should be primed to really take off in the second half. CC, is there any reason to doubt the Warriors can take it to another year?
You can doubt it. But if you look at who they are and what they've done, and I think the most important thing is that they're healthy. You know, right now they're healthy. Nick, before the season started, you talked about what would be the enemy of the Golden State Warriors. And not opposition, you know, not only San Antonio, not only Cleveland eventually, potentially, not only Houston, not only OKC, but their ability to stay focused in this fourth year, in this run. Now, what I believe, because it's only his second year and he's not going to be fatigued, is Kevin Durant. I believe that he's going to be enough to be able to keep them involved down the stretch. I believe that Steve Kerr will change the goals of the team, and it will be, I don't think they went into the season to try to have the best record. You know, they were public about when they broke the NBA record before that they weren't trying to do that. So I think that when they started the season, it's like, man, let's get started. We won the championship. All the accolades were given to him. Now, I think at the All-Star break, Steve Kerr is going to say, I want home court advantage. And I believe that this stretch, this window of games, we will see them play better defense. We will see them. They'll make shots, like we know that. And I believe that their bench will be energized because they know this is the preparation to get ready to try to repeat and potentially, for most of them, win 3 out of 4.
Whether or not this Warriors team can get got, as I like to say, I think we will have an idea of it based on just what Chris said. How does this final third of the season go? Because, yeah, they're not trying to go 73-9 anymore. They're not even worried about 70 wins. But they do care about the 1 seed. The 1 seed matters in the Western Conference, not only because you will have home court in the Western Conference Finals, but because of your path to the Western Conference Finals. The difference between playing either the 4 or the 5 seed in round 2, or likely the number 3 seed in round 2, is enormous, particularly in the West. And what we have seen from the Warriors thus far this year is the worst version of the Warriors over the last 3 years. Now, the worst version of the Warriors still might be better than basically every other team in the league. But they're no longer, for the first time in this run, a top 4 defense. They're 5th. Their point differential, instead of being record-setting as it was 2 years ago and last year, it's now not even a point differential that is better than the Toronto Raptors. Like, there are real reasons to look at the team and say, oh, like, it's one thing to take your foot off the gas. It's another thing to, speaking of Toronto, have 14 losses when the Raptors only have 16 losses. And so you might be asking, why is it happening? I think there are 2 significant reasons. One is the lack of focus, particularly on the defensive end. I think they can be a better defensive team than they've shown. But the other one is not fixable. And the other one is the one to look at, which is Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston. How good are they right now? How good are they in the twilight of their career? Iggy having the worst year of his career by far. Livingston having the worst year that he's had since the amazing comeback story after the knee injury.
Since he resurrected his career.
Those guys are key because since you brought over Durant, you don't have a ton of depth. You don't have a 9-man wave. Like, they were planning on playing Patty McCaw. He struggled, sent him down to the G League. Jordan Bell was a nice story. The pick they bought from Chicago. He hurt himself, and so he's not back yet. Like, so those 2 guys, I understand. Everyone's going to say Steph, KD, Clay, Draymond. But those two guys are key, and I don't know how good those guys still are.
Do you think, you talk about that, when you look at the key guys, though, the Kevin Durant's, the Steph Curry's, not having the same depth they've had in the past, is there one player, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, is there one player who you feel like is most critical to really kick them into gear now down this final stretch?
I think Draymond is really important. I believe the technical fouls, I believe his overall attitude, because I believe that the technical fouls with Draymond, before Steve Kerr and the rest of the team, they knew that Draymond was just the odd guy. But now it started to trickle into KD, that we see him at an all-time high as far as technical fouls. So just something small that I want to watch. I want to watch because suspensions come at 16 technicals, right? And he's at 13 now. So for me, I want to watch what's his body language, not how his body language is national anthem, close your mouth. That's not a good look. But what's his body language in this last stretch? Because his overall psyche, and Nick said first time they haven't been in the top 5. If Draymond gets engaged, I believe that they hop up and they are a top 3 team defensively. So that and the effect on Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant said he's overreacted. So I want to see him in this last third games down the stretch. His technical foul, how many he gets going down the stretch, because there is no point in Kevin Durant's career should he be facing a suspension because of technical fouls. So, to me, that's the effect of Draymond and being on Golden State.
And I want to see KD and Steph, the second and third best players in the league respectively, really go for what I would call some personal goals. Neither one of them is going to win MVP. The MVP is going to be, barring injury, James Harden, and if he gets hurt, LeBron's got a shot. But we were talking before the show. All NBA teams, these are things that matter historically on the resume. You know who didn't make a first-team All-NBA last year? Kevin Durant. He got hurt, missed some games. Kawhi Leonard made it. Right now, you look at first-team All-NBA at the forward spot. Well, LeBron's going to have a spot. There's Giannis and there's KD. Who's going to get it? You look at the guard spot. Harden's going to have a spot. There's Steph and there's Russ. Who's going to get it? These are guys that when it's all said and done, Steph and KD have the potential to be, forget top 25 all-time players, top 15, maybe top 10 all-time players. Go in efforting your team to victory. Also go for some of the individual outstanding accolades that go along with that. That's the re-engagement that I would like to see.
Can that help re-engage them? Because this team is so predicated on playing as a team, but we've seen in the early part Steve Kerr try to mix things up to get them mentally engaged, how he had Draymond Green and David, those guys drawing up plays. How much of that can re-engage them mentally, that it's not so much physically or technically on the court, but mentally get them
right. I believe it helps the coach, because if they echo in their behavior, in their effort, exactly what Steve Kerr is saying, the trickle-down effect is into the team, and then we'll see the results as far as their performance. We will see them point differential. We will see them back where they are. We will see them defensively back in it. But it's just Steve Kerr, he has their attention. Now, how do they respond to his overall coaching? And I believe that it starts right at the top. We saw KD, first possession NBA All-Star game. Defense. We saw him the last possession. Double teaming Steph, helping out on DeRozan in the corner. If he takes that into the second half of the season, I believe, Nick, we're going to see some of the results that you believe in, the personal stuff that also helps the team in their overall goals.
Because there is an odd thing. KD has gotten some Defensive Player of the Year buzz, but the Warriors have actually been better defensively when KD's been on the bench than when he's been on the court. KD's got the same defensive rating as Steph, and we look at Steph as a defensive liability. So KD's had some of the highlight defensive plays, blocks at the rim, some rim protecting, but maybe what goes along with that has been some laziness on defense as well, which is, again, understandable. But this was a good moment, a good line of demarcation for Steve Kerr to get the Warriors re-engaged. Since Steve Kerr's been the head coach, the Warriors have been first place in the Western Conference every single day of December, January, February, March. Every single day for 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and last year. They're now at the All-Star game, and they're not in first place. So this is a team that's never dealt with, are we going to be the 1 seed? They've been clearly the 1 seed his entire run. Now, if they are able to rip off 18 of 21 and show everyone, hey, we do have this extra gear, then they become the prohibitive favorites again. If they were in a dogfight with Houston for the 1 seed, To me, it becomes a real question if this year, if Houston could be the best team in the NBA.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're joined now by Chris Mannix. Chris, thanks for being here.
What's up?
You made it back okay from LA?
I heard you were talking about the Celtics, so I just had to run into the studio to voice my opinion on this.
Good to see you, man.
That is the truth. So speaking of, let's talk about the Boston Celtics. They started off the year strong, winning 22 of their first 26 games, but they've struggled recently, losing 9 of their last 15. Chris, we're going to keep it simple. What happened to Boston?
Well, for starters, they were playing with fire early in the season. We knew that. They were down by double digits a lot, and they crawled their way out of holes. Golden State down by 17. They come back. A bunch of games they were in, and they came back. But over the last month, you've seen a deterioration in toughness. I think that's kind of where it all starts. The defensive rebounding numbers are significantly down from what they were in the first half of the season. They're committing more fouls, which is an indication of sloppy play and being a little less consistent on the defensive end of the floor. Look at some of the numbers that, really average teams are kind of putting up on them every single night. Teams like Indiana, of course. Cleveland, we know that they can play. But, the numbers they're giving up most nights speaks to a lack of defensive intensity. Now, some of that is resolved when Marcus Smart comes back. That he's the kind of the linchpin of what they do in the perimeter defensively. But that front line and overall, they've got to reestablish some toughness because teams are going into Boston or Boston's coming there and they are getting punched in the cells, getting punched in the mouth night after night.
What are they better at than they were last year?
The point guard position, I think they're better at. I love Isaiah. But I think Kyrie is a better fit for this team than last year. I think Al Horford is actually a better player this year than he was last year.
So as a team as a whole, do you think they're better than last year?
Yeah, they're a better defensive team. The numbers back that up.
They're a better defensive team, but they're a far worse offensive team. And last year, we can't blame that on the Gordon.
Far worse offensive team. Like how?
Right now, I think they're 21st in offensive efficiency. Last year, I think they finished the year 12th or 13th. So I would consider that far worse.
But in the totality of it, I don't look. They were Isaiah Thomas centric last year. It was Isaiah, and he was averaging almost 30 per game, and that's great. But, flipping out Kyrie Irving and subbing in guys like Jason Tatum, who I think is a much more consistent scorer than Jay Crowder was. Al Horford, who, as I mentioned, I think is better. I think overall they're a better offensive team.
Just one more point on that, and then I'll be quiet for a second. By what metric is Kyrie been better this year than is he better than Isaiah? Kyrie's a better basketball player than Isaiah Thomas. But in what metric is 2018 Kyrie Irving better than 2017 Isaiah Thomas?
I don't think there's a metric for it. I do think when you get to the playoffs, though, which is all we're really talking about here, Kyrie Irving is a better player than Isaiah Thomas because, first of all, you don't necessarily have to hide Kyrie Irving the way they did defensively on Isaiah Thomas was.
Right.
And second, I just think he can take over a game and do more things in the fourth quarter than IT could.
And I believe that offensively, the offensive system, it's not based on the numbers. All right, it's based on what are the variables. Can they do more things? And I believe that his ability to distribute the ball a little bit better than IT in critical situations really helped. They were IT do everything. Points per game. Even his fourth quarter scoring, I believe it's inflated because he's really their only option. I just believe that if players like Morris, if he stepped up, he would be able to help them out offensively. I believe that on certain nights, he should be at least their number 2 option and their number 3 option. I believe it relieves some pressure from the young kids who this is the first time that they've had to do what they're doing. And doing it on both ends, it's just a little much for a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old, 20-year-old, because we know the NBA season. They've played spectacular. Being in Brown and Tatum. They're going to be great players for the Celtics. But right now, are they ready to shoulder the mountain load? No. But I believe Morris, his ability, if he stepped in, Marcus Smart coming back, stop shooting as much. Especially falling in love with that three-point shot that he has. I don't know who told him that he was a great shooter, but someone needs to inform him that he's not. But Morris, I just believe he's the type of player, and adding that offensive punch to them would give them what they need offensively because offensively, man, they are hard to watch. They fall into some lapses that are hard to recover from. I don't care how good your defense
is. Well, it's streaky with that second unit, no question. And by the way, with Kyrie being better equipped with the playoffs, remember, they were a Rajon Rondo injury from losing in the first round. Rondo doesn't go out for the Bulls. They're done. I don't believe that with Kyrie in the mix that kind of thing would happen.
That was a series that the Bulls had complete control over.
Total control over.
But this is, to me, just, I hear what everyone's saying, but it's just blind faith. It's just because we think it should be the case. Because, yeah, last year they didn't have Jason Tatum, but they did have Jay Crowder, who, again, shot the same percentage Tatum shooting this year, averaged the same points, actually averaged more rebounds.
Come on, you know he's not the same type of player.
I know
Jay
that
Crowder can't attack the rim in the way Jason Tatum.
What I know is this. I know that Jason Tatum will one day be far better than Jay Crowder ever will be. But do I think Jay Crowder last year, the best year of his career, is better equipped right now and
So
certainly...
you tell us what happened to the Celtics. What went wrong?
But they are, I'll tell you exactly, they are the same. They are, to me, a lesser version, slightly lesser version of the team they were last year. They're a team that, guess what, looked at this lineup and said, the only way we can really compete is it for a championship is if we add a Gordon Hayward. Like, Kyrie, what we keep doing with the Celtics to me is looking at what Jaylen Brown will be, what Jason Tatum will be, what Kyrie Irving is, and saying, well, that's obviously they're an improved team, as opposed to saying, okay, but Jason Tatum is taking the minutes Jay Crowder had, and Jay Crowder was awesome last year. Jaylen Brown's taking the minutes Avery Bradley had, and Avery Bradley was really good last year. Kyrie's taking the minutes Isaiah Thomas had. Isaiah Thomas was second-team All-NBA last year. Like, I have no evidence that you mentioned this team could have lost to the Bulls in the first round. This team could lose in the first round this year. Like,
But who's here trying to defend that? We don't think they're some great team.
Do you think they had different expectations for the trade deadline?
They were never going to give up a first-round pick, and that's kind of the way it goes. I think they had more expectations, still have expectations that somebody wriggles free at the buyout deadline. You know, they had their eyes on Joe Johnson for a minute. They're hoping that somebody like an Ersan Ilyasova or somebody that fits into what they do can come into the mix. But I'll tell you, how Boston can be better this year is if their bench steps up in the second half. Now, you love when I talk about Greg Monroe. You absolutely love the idea that Greg Monroe can be a difference maker. But they brought Greg Monroe in thinking that he could be an anchor for that second unit offensively, that you could throw the ball into the post, he could get fouled, he could slow the game down a little bit, and you could play your starting five together more and rely on Monroe with that second unit. So that's number one. Number two, Tatum coming into this mix and being there, I believe in Jason Tatum in the playoffs. I believe that even as a 19-year-old rookie, he's going to make plays because I've seen Brad Stevens show the faith in Jason Tatum that I've never seen a coach put faith in a 19-year-old rookie. End-of-game situations. Jason Tatum could suck for 3.5 quarters. He'd still be in the game in the fourth quarter, end of game, and he'd still be making plays. He's going through a rut right now. His three-point shooting's gone from 50% into the low 40s, like you said. He was leading the league in three-point shooting up until the first of the year.
Sustainable.
Well, I mean, look, it's 2+ months. That's a pretty good run for Jason Tatum. He's offensively gifted. I think he can be the third scorer they need to at least get to the conference finals.
Okay, well, if he is, he will be the first rookie to make a significant impact on a conference finalist since, I can't remember the last time it happened. And Cece, you mentioned who's saying differently. Man, Cleveland making these trades has made us, for some reason, change how we talk about the Celtics. Let's pretend Cleveland contracted and didn't exist. Prior to Cleveland making the trades, the consensus was, the Celtics are the favorites in the East. The Celtics are a team that can make the NBA Finals.
I don't know what consensus, not on this show.
Well, I mean, I did, yeah.
Well, he did. The Vegas
he's a guest.
No, I understand. But it's not just, but it wasn't just Mannix. Mannix gets beat up sometimes on this, but it wasn't just a lot of the NBA analysts were saying the Celtics are the favorite. You know this. And the fact that Cleveland all of a sudden got better shouldn't let the Celtics off the hook for what the hell's happened to them. For 2 months, they've been a 500 team. That's not because the Cavs added George Hill and Rodney Hood.
Well, their game changed after the London trip. Where everybody thought they'd come back off that London trip with one game in 9 days, refreshed, ready to play. They didn't. They totally cratered after that. We'll see how they look after the All-Star break.
Finally, Hall of Famer Jerry West had strong words for the future of the NBA. He said basketball is, quote, going to overtake all the other sports. CC, what's the future of the NBA across the sports landscape?
I think it's bright. I think the NBA is on the major come up. If you look at the amount of attention the NBA gets, forget about the daily basis, but in the off season, the traction, the summer league, the 3-on-3 league on FS1. Man, these things were so popular through the summer. I mean, Vegas, sellout records in Vegas. I mean, it's 150 degrees in Vegas. People are flocking to Vegas just to see the Summer League. Now, people say, well, man, with KD going west, like it didn't help the game. It didn't help from a competitive balance standpoint, but the popularity of the league in the last 5 years, it's as popular as I've ever seen it. The one thing I don't think the reason why it will overtake football, it's not because I played football. It's the fantasy football and the betting that happens on the weekend. NBA games, they are hard to bet 82 games. But when you have 16-game schedule, you have fantasy football, you have fans more wired into who the players are at an all-time level. So, yes, the NBA, it is popular, but I believe that football will be there for a while.
What the NBA has going for it is the available talent. Because it's the second most played sport in the world, you can pull players off almost every continent. I mean, we looked at the NBA All-Star game. Joel Embiid is from Cameroon. Giannis is from Greece. Like LeBron's obviously from Ohio. You have guys from all over the world to replenish your talent. Also, I would just remind people that would say football will be king forever. This does tend in this country to be cyclical. Over the last 100 years, the following sports have been the most popular sport at one point in time: horse racing, boxing, baseball, basketball, and pro football. Now, pro football has had a dominant run, and I don't buy into this idea that football's dying, as some people do. If for no other reason than the lowest rated football game is still higher rated than everything other than like Game 7 of an NBA Finals, and just a mediocre NFL playoff game is going to outrate most championship games for baseball, football, or basketball, certainly hockey. But I do think that the NBA can close the gap. The one thing I would say is this. I remember what Isaiah Thomas sat here yesterday and said, that if LeBron doesn't stay in Cleveland, CC, he would go to Golden State. That would, all the progress the league has made, that would erase it in one fell swoop. Like that man's one decision, to me, could kneecap the league's not only popularity, but some of its credibility over the next few years. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but the NFL's not susceptible to that. Like, if Tom Brady retires tomorrow, the league's popularity doesn't take any significant hit. If LeBron were to retire, or if he were to join the Warriors, that drastically changes the popularity of the league.
Right, and several things that the football has going for him, it's just not pro football. You have college football. You have high school football. Now, on the flip side, as far as basketball is concerned, we're less interested in college basketball. We're less interested in high school basketball because it's very, very fragmented with the AAU game. So, for me, those other programs and NCAA coming up with a rule. I believe if they stayed longer in college, 2 or 3 years, that make the college game stronger, keep the fan base so you can follow the players into the NBA. So I believe that the lack of high school dominance in basketball is going to hurt the overall popularity of the game. But I love the game, though.
Yeah. But you love another game a little more.
Well, I mean, I got love. Listen, I'm the kind of man, I'm a big man. I got enough love to go around for both of them.
We need it. So let's get back to the NFL
God.
and the draft. Our own Joel Klatt put out his first mock draft.
It's mock draft season?
Of the year. You ready? You ready, Nick?
This. Let's do this.
You can check out the whole thing at foxsports.com. Klatt has 3 quarterbacks going in the top 6. Sam Darnold going number 1 overall to the Browns. Baker Mayfield going at number 5 to the Broncos. And Josh Rosen going 6 overall to the Jets. CC, would Sam Darnold be the right pick for the Browns at number 1?
I wouldn't argue with this pick. I believe that Sam Darnold is going to be the best pro of all the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, he's been a star, not only in high school, but he's been a star at USC, led them to Pac-12 championships. That's one of my problems with Josh Rosen. Like, what has he won there? Like, they're in the Pac-12. It's not great defenses there. Like, if you are a franchise quarterback, you can't win a Pac-12 title. Like, so for me, Sam Darnold has all the things that I want from a quarterback. He can make every throw. He has a quick enough release. I believe his passing will be refined. He'll get even more accurate. And I just believe in critical situations, man, he was so impressive, bringing his teams back in the fourth quarter. To me, he is the number 1 guy. And then after that, it's just a matter of style. What do you like? Do you want to go with potential? Do you want to go with Rosen? Do you want to go with the wild card in Baker Mayfield? But I believe that the Browns, they would have gotten the quarterback situation right. Now, I don't believe that playing right now, no, drafting, but I didn't say playing right now. So if you decide to play him right now, then I might have to change my critique. Is it the right spot? Because these quarterbacks, they all need some time to develop.
Real quick, before I give my thoughts on this, one of the things you've been concerned about both the California quarterbacks is that you looked it up. Both of their hometowns have beach at the end of the name. They then both played in Southern California. When it comes, let's not worry about Rosen, but Darnold, the guy that we're talking about here, any concern about him, you always talk about the weather. Cleveland is not exactly a tropical climate. You have concern there?
Yeah, I have concern, but when you look at 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks, they're from California. So for me, I need to get to the combine. I want to see which kid wants to be there in the interviews. Josh Rosen, he's already been on record as saying, I don't want to be in Cleveland. So for me, that would move the other quarterbacks, even if he's a little higher than them. I don't want him there because every day you got to be in love with this job. And then there's some ugly parts to the game. And if you make up your mind you don't want to be in a place and they go ahead and pluck you and make you be there, no, that's another reason why Sam Darnold. I want to see their hand size. I want to see the interview. But I just believe that Sam Darnold has the body, the arm, and the brain to be a successful quarterback in the NFL.
All right, Cece, I got one of my theories. Are you ready for this? So I'm going to
put my seatbelt.
All right, I'm going to use Joel Klatt's mock draft for a moment. So he's got 3 quarterbacks in the top 6. But he does not have a quarterback going 2 or 3. To the Giants, he has them taking Barkley, and obviously the Colts, if they say they would not be drafting a quarterback. The Browns have the 4th pick as well. He has them taking Minkah Fitzpatrick, but leave that alone for a moment. If I'm Cleveland, I am strongly considering taking a quarterback at number 1 and taking a quarterback at number 4. Because guess what? If you miss on number 1, it won't matter how good Minkah Fitzpatrick or Saquon Barkley or any of these other non-quarterback positions are. Because guess what? The problem with Cleveland for as long as I've known the Browns, it's been you don't have a quarterback. And it's not like you've ruined the... If you're right that they're both good, then you can trade one of them in the future for a draft pick. If one of them's not good, that could have been the guy you took at number 1 and you would have been screwed. This is something I know, unlike how I think Kirk Cousins' contract might be structured, I think that might actually happen. I think we have reason to believe that someone could go off the board on that. It would be shocking if Cleveland does this. But if I'm Cleveland, I'm the new brain trust in Cleveland. I'm asking myself this question. To me, it's all about objectives. What is our singular objective of this draft? Getting our franchise quarterback. What's the best chance we have? Well, if there's a couple in this draft, or if there's one but we don't know who he is, I would strongly consider drafting 2 guys, letting them compete. Let them compete through training camp, preseason.
The only way I would allow you to do that, it's a crazy idea, is if they were 2 different styles. If you decide to go for Darnold with the number 1, and then the other pick, you decide to go for Baker Mayfield. Like, that would be the only way. But with the collective bargaining agreement, with the practice time, the practice has been cut down. So now you've compromised the number 1 pick because he's getting ready to split his reps, and he's not ready to be under the pressure of the 4th pick every day. All the questions with the press conferences and the team. I mean, who's Joe Thomas going to say is the quarterback? I don't know, man. No, the 4th pick had a better day today. So you're splitting the reps, and also you're going to smash the confidence of one of these kids. So what you might think might be trade bait, it might be jacked up by the time, because from a mental standpoint, he's not going to get the confidence and the reps to be able to take over the team and to take over the locker room. So, yes, in theory, on paper, it works. But now when you look at the collective bargaining agreement and the lack of reps and what you can do with the quarterback, I mean, how do you have the press conference? Who's the starter? I don't know.
Whoever's better. They're going to compete. It's about competition. Best man wins.
Yeah, but when the competition is based on you only have 100 plays that you can run, and now we have to split them. So now I'm compromising the kid who we think is the best player in the draft, because that's the guy who you're going to pay more money to. So what if the guy number 4, who you're paying less money to, then he beats out the number 1 guy? Then how much value does the number 1 pick have now, because he got beat out by the number 4 guy, and he has the biggest contract of the draft pool? But I don't know nothing about football.
No, those are all good points. I still like my idea.
Moving on to the NFL, Odell Beckham Jr. is coming off disappointing 4th season. He was sidelined with injuries for most of the year and played just 4 games. However, his teammate, Snacks Harrison, had high praise for him on Undisputed yesterday. Take a listen.
He's starting to understand now that he just has to change the way that he's viewed, because he's not that guy that they make him out to be. He's not this immature guy who's who causes problems everywhere. He's not a problem at all, actually. So, it's hard for me because if he were, I'd tell you. I'd tell him as well, but he's not. He's the greatest talent we've seen at the wide receiver position in the National Football League, in my opinion.
Whew. CC.
Strong praise.
Is Harrison right that OBJ is the most talented wide receiver we've ever seen?
A friend of the show, Snacks. I mean, poor Snacks. And also, you have to understand the relationship that Harrison has with Odell. He's a big brother to him. They are very, very good friends. Odell is very, very talented and definitely one of the most talented wide receivers. But we're such a prisoner of right now. I have to give you kind of a history lesson of some of the wide receivers. And I probably have to go, I'd have to mention 25 of those in the Hall of Fame because those are the best receivers that have ever played the game. And amongst them were some tremendous athletes. I could go back and talk about Lance Allworth, how fast he was. I could talk about Raymond Berry, his ability to catch the ball and run. But I'll just stay with some people that the fans would know.
More contemporary guys.
Yeah, James Lofton at 6'4" and run the 4.3 was one of the most talented receivers. Ran great routes, great after the catch. So that was in the late 80s to the 90s. Who else did we have after that? I'll leave Jerry Rice off to the side. Michael Irvin, tremendous athlete. Because we're not just talking about best receiver. Michael Irvin, tremendous athlete. We graduated from the same year in high school. He was at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. I was at Middletown High School. In Middletown, Ohio, we were USA Today high school All-Americans. Keith Jackson was the tight end on that team. So we've seen a lot of great wide receivers. Even before that, I'll go to the ballerina with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Lynn Swann. Definitely one of the most talented wide receivers we had ever seen. And probably him and Randy Moss play the game off the ground as good as we've ever seen it. Well, people are like, what is that? Well, yards after the catch, that's when you catch it and you run after it. Off the ground is when you are in the air. How good are you in the air? And to me, Lynn Swann was a person who I modeled my game after. Randy Moss was excellent at that. So that would bring us to where we are right now. Odell Beckham, is he the most talented? Randy Moss is the most talented. I've gone on record as saying the most talented wide receiver I've ever seen. Now, I've been very, very fortunate. I played in the era with the GOAT, and this is no disrespect to Jerry Rice because there is a talent to getting up every day and working at your craft.
Right.
Jerry Rice is the best route runner that we've ever seen, the consummate pro. He can run any route on the route tree. He can run short. He can run intermediate. He can go deep. Jerry Rice can also play any position on the field. He can play to the strong side. He can play to the weak side. He could play in the slot. He had a great football mind. So Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver ever, and he was one of the most talented. People talk about, well, his overall breakaway speed. Well, watch him when the tape is on. Watch him when people are chasing him. He is as fast as anyone else that we've ever seen playing the game. But the most talented wide receiver that we have seen is Randy Moss. Now, there's some guys who had a lot of talent. They don't get the notice. That is a guy like Andre Rison, tremendous football player, explosion, route running, releases off the line of scrimmage. Sterling Sharp, Shannon's brother. Yeah. Man, he was a bad dude. If he didn't hurt his neck, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. Still potentially could make the Hall of Fame. Very, very talented. Great runner after Kent. Huge hands, strong hands. Now, these are the most talented wide receivers that I've encountered, and I'm not even going to go to guys who are a little bit less in age. And Calvin Johnson, number one, and Larry Fitzgerald, who I've spent a lot of time with since he's 14 years old, working with him, who's also very, very talented.
So I smiled when I saw what Snacks said, because Snacks said something probably that something I was trying to say last year. He just unfortunately said a little better than I did. I said last year Odell's the best football player in the league. And people took that to mean that I thought Odell was better than Tom Brady. I thought better than what I was trying to say is he has more raw, natural, athletic ability than any player currently playing. And I believe that to be true. I believe Odell, you mentioned the different routes. I think Odell can run every single route. I don't think there's a great way to defend Odell because if you jam him, unlike guys who maybe are bigger guys that you think could get off the jam better, you've shown me this. His releases off the line of scrimmage are as good as any player in the league right now. And if you don't jam him and you play off him, he can do that quick slant. But unlike some other guys, unlike his college teammate Jarvis Landry, who does a quick slant, goes 6 yards, he can take it for 60 yards. I think
true.
There are not holes that I can see in Odell's game physically. Now, mentally, he has some inconsistency. Now, injury-wise, we saw if that's going to be a trend, or he came into the league, missed his first few weeks with a sprained ankle. He then this year broke his leg. Like, you don't hold that against him, but it's something to watch. But it is an important distinction that Snacks Harrison didn't say he's the best football player, best receiver we've ever seen. The talent versus greatness is a real thing. Randy Moss is, I agree with Chris, the most talented receiver ever. But he's not he wasn't better. He didn't have a better career than Jerry Rice. I say this with all due respect to Chris. I think Michael Irvin might have been more physically talented than Chris. But there's no one that could think Michael had a better career than Chris. So sometimes what your overall legacy is what you make of your talent. Like, all of these guys obviously are very talented. But when we're talking about, I look at Odell and Randy, like, could they have been stars in other sports? I think so. I
mean, it's. I don't like to go to the other sports, but if we were playing another sport, Odell Beckham, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, these would be guys I would choose. Like, if we were playing any other game, we were playing your game, basketball, if we were playing tennis, even if none of them knew how to play, that's the kind of athleticism that they do have. But the huge advantage that Randy Moss has, now, I could represent Snacks on a certain portion of it, because Odell, his releases off the line of scrimmage are amazing. I'm talking about they are probably the top 5 guys I've ever seen play the game. His ability to run after the catch. I'm talking about and be able to finish. He is number 1 and 2 with Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was in the West Coast offense, but, man, that West Coast offense is just an offense without him. He will take that short route, and he will plant that thing in the end zone. So those are things that, Snack wasn't wrong. Like, this kid is very, very talented. But also, that's why my expectations for him on and off the field, because he is that type of talent. He is a once every 20-year type talent, and I believe that we'll see he'll just continue to get better. He's very, very young.
How does he better maximize that raw talent?
Focus, because one thing with Jerry Rice was there wasn't a day that he was not motivated. When Jerry Rice woke up the day after the Super Bowl in Miami against San Diego, when he scored 3 touchdowns, he separated his shoulder in the game. He was in Hawaii the next day trying to play in the Pro Bowl. They had to remove him from the Pro Bowl and not let him play. He was on the table, spat it up for the first day of practice, and he's like, Jerry, you're not going to be able to play. So that right there, his ability to focus, and if he accomplished something, he would change his goals. So his ability to stay in the moment, in real time, and to think that he wasn't great. He always questioned his overall ability. So that right there, that consistency, that hunger, that drive right there, that's the separation between Jerry Rice and the rest of us. Because when you look at the wide receivers, like, there's a lot of good ones. But it's Jerry Rice, and then it's 2, 3, 4, 5, and to down to 25.
And the reason people, while they have all that respect for what Jerry accomplished, the reason people hold Randy's talent in a separate category almost is because it was all those things Chris mentioned. And the one thing Chris didn't mention, this guy's 6'4.5" doing it. So it's the as fast as anybody we've seen at the position or nearly, can jump as high as basically anyone at the position. And by the way, the perfect height. Like
Randy Moss, you couldn't bump him. Randy Moss played the ball above the ground as good as anyone's played. How fast is Randy Moss? 1 step faster than the guy chasing him. And those are things that are unique. Touchdown machine on some of the most prolific offenses ever. And I would say Randy's never really been on a team like the Giants, like he was on last year, that's lost that many games, too.
Oh, yeah.
Winning is a part of it.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for joining us here.
Been too long, Coach. Good to see you. How are you?
He just had to do it, too.
I know.
It hadn't been too long for you.
I wasn't here when he was here last week. I haven't seen Coach in like a month.
We missed a lot of handshakes.
Absolutely.
He was sending me like emojis of handshakes.
No, that's
Do you guys have a handshake?
No, I just.
It's a secret handshake.
aggressive.
Very aggressive.
This guy.
Yeah, I'm very excited when I get to see Coach. He's my favorite.
Let's talk about Kirk Cousins. According to a report, the Jets are willing to pay whatever it takes to lure him to New York. They have more than $70 million in cap space, more than enough to fit in what should be a monster contract for the quarterback. But, Coach, would teams be better off breaking the bank on Cousins or taking a quarterback in the draft?
On this decision, you have to be right either way. So typically you're taking a quarterback very high, or you're going to spend a ton of money in free agency like the Jets are. And if you're wrong, whoever that coaching staff is and that GM, they're not going to survive it. The quarterback will stay there, but usually you're not going to survive it. So if they feel that Kirk Cousins can be that guy, that force multiplier, that guy that not only gives them a chance to win games, but gives them a chance to compete for championships, then it doesn't matter what you pay. The cost is irrelevant at that point. You have to get that problem fixed. They tried to fix it with Mark Sanchez. You know, that worked for a very short amount of time with a really good team that they had there at the time. So it's, if they feel that he is that guy, to me, whether they break the bank or don't break the bank, they need to do whatever it takes.
Coach, from a franchise standpoint, the pluses and minuses to taking one of these quarterbacks. Let's just forget Kirk Cousins if he's available. Let's just say this team, if their front office decide they're going to build through the draft, what are some of the pluses and minuses that go with that? Even though you have the same cap space, but they're going to go with a young quarterback with this team.
The huge plus is that you have money now to spend on the rest of the team, at least through the first 4 years of the contract, and even 5 years. Under the old CBA, when you brought in a guy high, you could get killed if it didn't work out. Now with the new CBA, draft picks are reasonable contracts for the first 4 years, and even that fifth-year option are reasonable contracts. You go pay a guy at $25 million, $30 million, whatever that number it is, you're getting him at a premium, and it affects the whole rest of the lineup.
Well, you mentioned the term force multiplier, which is one of your favorites, and I thought of it when I've heard some of the commentary surrounding Kirk, because this last year in Washington, while he wasn't bad by any means, it was the worst of these last 3 years that he's had. They had the fewest wins, but he also had the fewest yards, lowest quarterback rating, fewest touchdowns, or most interceptions, I should say. A lot of people said, well, lost to Deshaun Jackson, lost Pierre Garçon, and it got me thinking about one of the things you say, which is, well, if you're going to pay a guy what he's going to get paid, he needs to be someone that it's not irrelevant, but it's not as relevant who the people are around him, because he makes the people around him better. How much of that is a concern for you, that when he lost his top two weapons, his level of play dropped off significantly?
It's a huge concern for me, and that's always a red flag, because if you have to talk about paying or supporting your franchise quarterback with a bunch of elite playmakers, then I don't know if he's really a franchise quarterback. When you look at Tom Brady, year after year after year, there's new guys, and whoever comes in has a bunch of receptions. He's not a household name before he gets there, and then he is. When you insert a guy like Randy Moss, it's an explosive situation. So if we're sitting around talking about, well, he needs two really good outside receivers, a great tight end, then you kind of have a guy.
Well, if you look at the players that he did lose, they are not elite players. Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, they are proven NFL commodities, 1,000-yard receivers. But also, the only thing Nick didn't tell you was the guy they did go out and get, Terrell Pryor, he only caught 20 passes. So I don't know. You got to have somebody catch the ball. Like, we like to give the credit all the quarterback, and we like to give him all the blame. Their skilled players were not good. Their best player was Tristan Thompson, the running back, who was a backup. Like, he was their best offensive player. So trying to knock Kirk Cousins for not playing with guys because Tom Brady plays with a bunch of normal people, like, that's not the way to compare a quarterback. Kirk Cousins, what he went through this year in Washington was not his fault. To be able to throw for 4,000 yards with those guys, like, that was an accomplishment. If you watch the games and you watch the football that was played. So to me, the numbers would indicate that it wasn't his most productive year, but to me, it's one of his most successful because who he was playing with and the situation that they dealt with on the offensive line and with their tight end from injury standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that you can have anybody off the street come in and play the position, but I do think those guys, Aaron Rodgers, for example, Peyton Manning, they can take guys and elevate them. Now, you want to have as high a starting point as you can, you get a situation like you had with Randy Moss. You saw how incredible that worked out. It's just when you have to constantly talk about surrounding a player with elite talent, that makes me concerned about how elite he is.
Given the Jets' cap situation, would they have the resources if they gave him that contract? Would they have the resources to find the different pieces to surround him with?
Well, it's going to take a significant portion of the cap. It depends how they structure it. You can front end it, you can back end it, you could push it off for a couple of years so that you're really borrowing on the future. It will depend organizationally how they want to structure and what kind of push they want to make in free agency overall this offseason.
You mentioned front-ending it. Would you have reservations? The thing that I've advocated, either whether it be Cleveland, who has over $100 million in cap space, the Jets were likely to have over $85 million once they make a couple more moves, that they could significantly front-load a contract where the signing bonus is usually prorated over the entirety of it. You could give him almost the entirety of the signing bonus in year one. So let's say he gets 5 years, $150 million. It's obviously a $30 million average. If you backload it, it goes 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. If you flipped that around, and you did maybe $50 million in year one and then $25 million each of the next four, is that something, as from a team-building perspective, if you can afford it in year one, would be attractive to you?
Look, the more that you can structure it so that you have the ability to get out of it, or you can pay as you go, so that each year you're not looking at a situation where you've got to dramatically change the team in order to go out in free agency and improve the team. That's great, but you're seeing a head coach and a GM that needs to win, and you're going to borrow against future years. There's going to be a bloodbath.
You have to cut him in year 3, though, because all that's going to come to hit the cap. So, like, your first year, you're going to have a party. But then after that, it's going to be a nightmare, and people are going to be coming for your head and your job, Mr. Salary Cap Manager.
Well, if you front-load it, it's not a bloodbath. It's only a bloodbath if you've backloaded the signing bonus.
But if you're the GM and head coach and you need a contract extension, you're going to backload it because you'll get the extension and you'll get as much as you can right now to hopefully give you the chance to see the rest of that contract.
The Le'Veon Bell's contract issues continue despite wanting a long-term deal. Reports say the Steelers are expected to use the franchise tag on the running back. Bell played under the tag last season but skipped all of the preseason and training camp. Nick, are the Steelers making a mistake not signing Bell to a long-term deal?
I mean, I think it's mean, to be totally honest. I think you use a guy having 400 carries. You know how short the lifespan of a runner, the career span of a running back is. You know that this is a guy who has desperately wanted his big payday and earned it on the field. So I think just from like a human perspective, it's a crummy thing to do. But from a team perspective, I get it. Like, go ahead. Yeah, guess what, Le'Veon? You were really upset about the $12 million franchise last year. Well, you're about to get a $13.4 million franchise this year, and you're going to deal with it. Like, sorry. And guess what? After we give you another 400 touches, we'll see if anyone wants to pay you $13 million again anytime in your career. Coach mentioned the new CBA. The new CBA has been unfair more so to one position than any other one, to running backs, because their best years are their first few years. They don't get paid much on their rookie contracts, and if they're awesome like L. Bell was, you can just franchise him a couple times. So I get it from the Steelers' perspective. I don't think it's nice, but they don't care about nice.
Right. I believe the running backs will eventually, their numbers will get back up there. And the reason why is because overall usage. If you look at L. Bell, if he's franchised, I know he's poor. He's $26 million over 2 years. All right. But with Todd Gurley in 2 years, his contract to be up. Year after that, Ezekiel Elliott's contract will be up. Then you will see, because of L. Bell and these other players and the overall productivity. The reason why the numbers went down for the franchise numbers because the running back was becoming obsolete. Like Kareem Hunt's a prime example. Like, you can find guys that can rush the football, catch the ball, coming out of the backfield. And so it was discredited, devalued for a while. Now it's reemerging. I believe that Barkley at Penn State, he will benefit from L. Bell, from Todd Gurley, from their overall productivity. We'll see high draft picked running backs start to come back as being the norm. But this is price for doing business. Last year, when they decided to give Antonio Brown $18 million over the course, long term, when they decided to do that, they told me they weren't going to sign L. Bell. Now, I've been sitting over here, Sarah, you're new. But this is owed to him But maybe you'll listen to me because he wouldn't listen to me. He said that Pittsburgh, they put 400 carries on him. Like they know they're not going to pay him. They were trying to win as many games.
Yeah.
That still wasn't enough carries for them to be able to get themselves to a Super Bowl and try to win their 7th Lombardi trophy.
No,
So,
hold on. Maybe you weren't listening to me.
listen, they were not giving him the ball absent of thinking, this is going to hurt his contract negotiation. They are in the moment. They are trying to win. They know that the running back position, they know that Ben just said, I want to play 2 or 3 more years. You know what that means? A contract renegotiating. Your wide receivers making $18 million, which they value to be more important than the role that you play. So I'm not surprised. I thought that they would franchise him again. I didn't think that they would give him the 4 or 5 year contract at $15 million a year that he wants.
I didn't think they would either. The point that I was making with the number of, it is easier to, how do you drive a rental car? Not the same way you drive your own car. Like you're harder on it. You might hop a few more curves. You might drive a little faster. When you are not tied to a player long term, when you do not have to worry about the length of his career or the health of him past this season, you're more apt to use him more than you have in the past.
So does this mandate come from the front office? Because I want to know. I've never heard of this. Does this mandate that, hey guys, he's at 250 carries. Now, this week, I only need him to touch the ball 22 times because I don't want to get above his threshold. Do you think – who's telling Mike Tomlin this?
Hold on. You said you've never heard of this. You've never heard of teams being very cautious with their big long-term assets? We've never seen a team like the Indianapolis Colts with Andrew Luck this past year be extra cautious because he's such a long-term part of their future as opposed to
Andrew Luck, what he went through and trying to compare it to a running back, they're not comparisons.
Well, okay,
all right, DeMarco Murray, when he played in Dallas, they said at the end that they were cutting his carries. But you know something? He ended up playing for another team. So what did it help him? Right. So if the team cut his carries, that would be to keep him into the future. They didn't do that. They wanted him fresher for the playoffs. As far as what your future is right now. You are in the moment. There are not people upstairs managing the carries because we're not going to give him a long-term contract. That's not happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is one reason why they have the most Lombardi trophies. It's because they do things the right way. Their front office is not counting his carries. I just knew that a running back, they are not going to pay a guy $15 million over 5 years.
Does Bell have any leverage in this situation?
No. I mean, he'll do what he did. He'll do what he did last year again, which is sit out all of training camp, sit out all of the preseason, and then come in. He can make as much money this year as he's made in the entirety of his career combined. So, no. I mean, his only leverage, to be honest, was he could have threatened to set out a playoff game because once the regular season ends, they could have given him a long-term deal, but no one's ever done that. So, no, he doesn't have leverage. He's going to take it. Cece, I'm a man of the people. I understand you.
It's not a matter of the people. It's a matter of giving people concrete stuff that the people can learn from it and be informed.
Right.
As they have these conversations.
I get that. I understand. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's fair to L. Bell, but no, he doesn't have no leverage. Hey, everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
We're going to go back to the NFL. After a stellar first season, Dak Prescott struggled a little in year 2 as the Cowboys missed the playoffs. Former Pro Bowl quarterback Ron Jaworski said Dak started to lose some confidence last year. CC, what does Dak need to do to improve in year 3?
Well, when you drop 5 to 8 points as far as completion percentage, you're going to lose confidence. When you lose football games, you're going to lose confidence. When they stop stacking the line of scrimmage the way they did for Ezekiel Elliott and start playing coverage, you start throwing interceptions, you're going to lose confidence. Sports is about confidence, but you can't have some false confidence. You can't be like you got confidence you're not successful. So being successful breeds confidence. He wasn't as confident this year, but the people around him didn't play well. The offensive line, I mean, there's a reason why they made a change in the offensive line coach. There's a reason why they made a change at the wide receiver coach. Figure it out for yourself, because those two positions, they let Dak down. Now, in critical situations, did his fundamentals, did his eyes watch the rush, did he keep his head down the field? No, some of those things did. They did creep in. But as a young quarterback, I just know from year 1 to year 2, you learn more football. Now, how much can you appropriate to the game? I didn't see it appropriated, but I know Dak. He learned more football and he can do more things. But you need help. And with the lack of productivity from the wide receivers, the offensive line, their best offensive lineman, Tyron Smith, the left tackle, had a subpar year, being from one of the best offensive linemen, if not the best in the league, to just being is he going to play this week? He couldn't practice. So there were a lot of things that led to Dak taking a step back. But year 3, I expect Dak to be one of the elite passers that we have in the NFL, but that will come with winning double-digit games. So that will breed more confidence in him year 3.
Man, maybe I'm being a prisoner of the moment. Maybe there's some recency bias here, because I was as high on Dak as anybody after year 1. But there were some so many, to me, red flags in year 2. I understand the circumstances weren't perfect. But to go from one of the most efficient quarterbacks, single seasons we've ever seen, certainly the most efficient rookie season we've ever seen, to a below-average quarterback, and have the reason being you did have the very best offensive line in the league. And now this year you just had a slightly above average offensive line. You did have 16 games with Ezekiel Elliott, and now you only had 10 games with Ezekiel Elliott. He still had better production from his running game over the course of the season than the vast majority of quarterbacks. He still had a better offensive line than the vast majority of quarterbacks. Now, what he didn't have was better offensive weapons on the outside than the vast majority of quarterbacks, but I don't know where he's getting those weapons this year. Yeah, they could draft a tight end or a wide receiver in the first round, but it's not like this is a great free agent crop of wide receivers. We just saw Jarvis Landry get franchise tagged, and I don't think he's an amazing player, but he would have been the best wide receiver the Cowboys had. I don't know that the Cowboys are going to be able to drastically improve the team around him. And if they don't do that, then it's on Dak. And I didn't see last year during the course of the Zeke suspension that he was able to overcome that and take it to the next level. I didn't see evolution over the course of the year. I was truly surprised and disappointed with what I saw from Dak over the entire course of the season.
If one thing happened, if Tyron Smith, the left tackle, was healthy, if he was practicing and playing every game, offensively, they're going to solve a lot of their problems. The reason why? Because they're going to have a dominant running game. And when you have a dominant running game, it's only 65 to 70 plays. You got 35 to 40 plays right there. You don't even have to book. So you're only calling another 25 to 30 plays just based on situation. So the game becomes easier. You can't just blame it on the quarterback. When you have free runners in the backfield, when you're not getting as many yards on first down, Ezekiel Elliott in his rookie year, he rushed for 1,000 yards on first down. When you don't duplicate that productivity, other people are going to suffer. And you saw the quarterback suffer. When you throw the ball, it's incomplete. It only tells one story. Did somebody drop it? Because when you drop, they stop drives, stop you from getting first downs. So we're not talking about all these things that happen. Lack of productivity from the tight end, lack of explosive plays. So it's not Dak. I watch enough football. I see the Dallas Cowboys. They have so many problems around them. It's just easy to blame Dak.
So does it make a difference that teams can scout him better or saw more film or can game plan better after seeing a guy for a full year?
Yeah.
Does that make a difference?
Jaworski said in his comments, there's 30 guys sitting in a room and they know what you can't do. That's one of the things that people say when guys in the league have success, they make an excuse. Oh, no one's seen them before. Then they continue that success. It's like, oh, this guy's adjusted to the game. When they don't, they be like, oh, they figured them out. Well, part of it got figured out. Also, was that level sustainable for real? So we could blame it on 30 guys in a room, but I've never seen a meeting where there's 30 guys in a room trying to figure out one player. But nice try, Jaws.
That's your guy, too.
Yeah, nice one. It sounds better. Nice hyperbole. Let's get the yeast. Let's make it rise.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.